Have you ever wondered why, even though you've tried so hard, there's still a feeling deep inside that something is missing? Have you ever blamed yourself, asking whether age has taken away the most important part of being a man? And what if I told you that the problem isn't your strength, isn't time itself, but simply one small detail that most men were never taught? I'm Dr. Emily Carter, a urologist specializing in men's health on the channel Urologist, Men's Health. Over more than 15 years of working with men over the age of 50, I've discovered a truth that brings enormous relief to many of them. Most are not less than they used to be. They're just using an old approach for a body that has changed. And unfortunately, no one told them this sooner. Today's video is not about complicated techniques or unrealistic promises. I'm going to explain a simple, science-based principle that helps many women feel more satisfied and more deeply connected, even when both partners are well into the mature stages of life. What's interesting is that this principle is actually best suited for older men, men who know how to slow down, listen, and truly be present. If you find this content helpful, please subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future videos. And as you're watching, if this video touches something very real inside you, you can leave a comment with the number 1. If you feel it doesn't bring value, 0 is completely respected as well. Your feedback helps me understand you better and serve you better. Now, before we move into the specific method, let's take a moment to look at one major difference between how men and women experience intimacy, a difference that has been misunderstood for decades. There is a very familiar feeling that many middle-aged men have never put into words. It's the sense that you've done everything right. You've cared, you've tried, you've even sacrificed a great deal. Yet the closeness between the two of you is no longer what it once was. There's no fighting, no cold distance, just a vague emptiness that's hard to name. Have you ever wondered whether the problem lies with you or with something deeper? For many years, men have been taught that satisfaction comes from endurance, duration, and the ability to perform better. What few ever tell them is that women, especially mature women, do not experience intimacy in the same way. When I speak with couples over the age of 50, what I often hear from the man is, "I'm not the man I used to be," while from the woman I hear, "I don't feel connected anymore." This moment is crucial because it shows that the problem is not that you've become weaker, but that you're trying to solve an emotional issue with an outdated mindset. The body changes, sensations change, but the approach stays the same. And this mismatch is what causes both partners to fall silent, each privately believing they are the problem. Here is the emotional turning point. If you keep trying harder in the same old way, you won't just become more exhausted. You'll move even farther away from what the woman beside you truly needs. So what was misunderstood from the very beginning? And what does science actually say about this difference? In the next part, you'll hear an answer that very few men have ever been told. There is a deeply paradoxical truth. The more a man believes he understands a woman's body, the more likely it is that he's actually misunderstanding it. Not because he doesn't care, but because most of what he's learned comes from movies, secondhand stories, or very limited personal experience. And those sources rarely reflect how a woman's body truly responds, especially after the age of 40 or 50. Science shows that only a small percentage of women experience satisfaction purely from internal movement alone. The majority require a completely different kind of stimulation, one that is more subtle, more consistent, and closely tied to rhythm. What's rarely discussed is that many of the familiar positions men rely on unintentionally bypass this most sensitive area altogether. So the feeling that something is missing doesn't come from you not being good enough, but from stimulating the wrong place. What confuses many men is that women rarely say this directly, not because they don't know, but because they're afraid of hurting you. And so, over the years, both partners settle into a level of intimacy that is good enough, but never truly deep. The emotional peak of this section comes down to one question you should ask yourself. If a woman's body operates on a fundamentally different principle, could trying harder, stronger, or longer actually be leading you in the wrong direction? The answer lies in a very small change, one that touches the very core of sensation. And that's exactly what we'll talk about next. What's interesting is that the solution isn't about learning dozens of new techniques, it's about letting go of one old belief. The belief that intimacy must be tied to speed, force, or the need to get it done. In reality, a woman's body responds most strongly when it feels steady contact and a synchronized rhythm. This principle is based on alignment between two bodies, where movement is no longer constant in and out motion, but a gentle, slow, harmonious flow. When positioning is adjusted correctly, a woman's external sensitive area remains in continuous contact without interruption. It is this continuity, not intensity, that becomes the key. What surprises many men is that this principle is actually best suited to the stage of life they once believed was a disadvantage. As the body slows down and reflexes are no longer rushed, the ability to sense each breath and each subtle movement increases. And that heightened awareness is exactly what women need most in order to feel truly connected. The warning question here is this: if you continue to see the natural slowing that comes with age as a loss, you may miss the greatest opportunity to create the deepest intimacy of your life. So, how can this principle be applied in a natural, effortless way? The next part will guide you through it step by step. The key to applying this principle is to avoid creating the feeling that you're trying a new technique. Everything should begin from what already feels familiar so the body doesn't resist. When the two of you are close, the first thing to change isn't movement, it's breathing. Slow it down. Make it steadier. Begin to feel instead of think. When the position is adjusted slightly higher, contact becomes more stable, and movement naturally shifts into a gentle rocking motion. At that point, you're no longer leading and you're not following either. The two bodies begin to listen to each other. By paying attention to very key small signals, a deeper breath, a subtle pull closer, you'll know you're moving in the right direction. A pivotal moment often appears when the woman begins to guide the rhythm herself. That is the clearest sign of safety and connection. And the paradox here is this: when you let go of the need to perform well, the experience becomes far deeper and more meaningful. But it's also right here that many men make mistakes that cause everything to fall apart. That's why it's important to understand what not to do before concluding that this approach isn't right for you. The final part will help you avoid the most common traps. The most common mistake is rushing. When you speed up out of anxiety, the shared rhythm is immediately disrupted. The connection, which is still fragile in the early stages, disappears before it has a chance to form. The second mistake is silence. A simple, gentle question can create a far deeper sense of being heard and safe than any technique ever could. The next mistake comes from focusing too much on yourself. When your mind is filled with thoughts like, "Am I doing this right?" or "Am I good enough?" you've already stepped out of the present moment. And finally, there's giving up too soon. The body needs time to learn a new rhythm, much like learning a new language after years of not using it. The emotional core of this section lies in one truth: age does not take away your capacity for intimacy. It simply removes unnecessary urgency. When you understand this, slowing down is no longer something to fear, but something that becomes an advantage. And from this realization, we arrive at a very important conclusion about maturity, presence, and the true value of a man at the deepest stage of his life, something I will share with you in the closing section. By this point, you've probably realized something very important. Intimacy doesn't disappear with age. It simply changes the way it shows up. What leaves many men feeling unfulfilled isn't a loss of ability, but the fact that they're still trying to use the strength of youth in the stage of life that calls for the subtlety of maturity. When you slow down, when you are fully present, when you listen instead of trying to prove yourself, you begin to touch exactly what the woman beside you needs most. True satisfaction doesn't come from doing more, it comes from doing things more rightly. Not right according to a rule book, but right for the biology, emotions, and sense of safety of both partners. And the greatest paradox of all is this: the older you get, the more of an advantage you actually have. If you allow yourself to change the way you see things, this week, try something very simple. Slow down by just one beat. Observe a little more. Let sensation guide you instead of thought. If this video has given you a new perspective, please subscribe to the channel to continue exploring deeper topics on men's health and intimacy with me. And as I said at the beginning, if these ideas resonate with you, leave a comment with the number still. 1. If not, 0 is completely respected as well. Because in the end, what makes a man truly attractive is not strength, but understanding and the ability to form a deep, meaningful connection with the person beside him.